Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Saturday morning to you all. Hope you guys are getting up and feeling well out there, having a great start to your weekend. I got you a pretty big update on the tropics. We're going to continue to talk about what is now officially Tropical Storm Ian. I think it upgraded around 11 p.m. last night, I believe, Eastern time. So we actually have Tropical Storm Ian out there. It's forecast to become a hurricane and also forecast to become a major hurricane, which is Category 3 or higher. Is it going to make landfall as a Category 3 hurricane? There's still some questions on that. And there's been a little bit of changes overnight. We're going to talk about what that means. So we're going to break this video up. I've been able to find some time to put some timestamps in these videos where we're going to go over what it looks like right now, the latest updates. We're going to talk about some model guidance, and then we're going to break down what's steering this, what could potentially steer it one way or the other. We're going to talk about all that, what's promoting strengthening, and then we're going to give you a very brief update on what's going to happen today weather-wise across most of the country at the very tail end of the video. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it, guys. I'm about to hit 30,000 subscribers. I just want to thank each and every one of you guys for supporting me. It means the world. It really does. Hit me up on Twitter, Facebook, but definitely Twitter. I know more people have Facebook rather than Twitter. Twitter seems kind of lame for certain people, and I don't blame you. I thought it was kind of lame at first until I got kind of addicted to it. It's a great way to get a feed of information, especially when it comes to the weather world, and I'm constantly updating things on there. If it's not every hour, every 2 hours, and things are always changing, guys, so it's a great way to stay up to date. If you guys got anything that I can pray about, pray over, please put it in the comments below. It gives me an opportunity to pray over it, and it gives others an opportunity to do so too. Hope you guys up in Nova Scotia, Newfoundland are faring well this morning. I'm seeing a lot of video for some storm chasers up in that area. Some intense winds. I haven't seen anything too catastrophic yet, but of course the sun is still coming up in that area up there. Fiona, it's a post-tropical cyclone, still a 90-mile-per-hour storm, but it's totally lost its tropical characteristics, and it was losing it as early as last night, as that was just looking completely dried out. And there was actually a dry side to this tropical system where the winds were actually more intense, according to a lot of the storm chasers up there. But right now, we got Gaston, we still got Hermine, but those aren't really bothering anybody, really. But we got Ian, Tropical Storm Ian. It is strengthening. Per the 5 a.m. update, another update will come out in probably about 45 minutes. This might get upgraded to a 50-mile-per-hour tropical storm, but obviously, between now and when I make another video, it'll probably be around this afternoon, guys. I'm going to a football game, so I'm not going to make one around 7, 8 p.m. I'll probably drop a video around 5:30 this afternoon. So stay tuned for that. It'll be a little bit earlier than I normally do on my evening videos. But it's a 45-mile-per-hour storm. It has a central pressure of 103 millibars. So I would say that it's verifying a little bit stronger than what most models are thinking it is right now. That means a lot. It does. But right now, 45-mile-per-hour Tropical Storm Ian right here, starting to enter the Central Caribbean, where it's beginning to get into a favorable environment. We'll talk about that here in a second. Tropical Storm Watch is up still for Jamaica. No upgrades to any kind of warnings as of the 5 a.m. update. This might change. Might change at the 8 a.m. update. I always want to reiterate that because it seems like as soon as I drop these videos in the morning, you have an update that changes multiple things. As of right now, Hurricane Watch is up, but I have a feeling you'll get Hurricane Warnings up. Definitely for the Cayman Islands right here. And then I have a feeling we'll definitely get some hurricane watches up for Western Cuba today. But you see this M forecast to become a major hurricane per the latest cone as early as 2 a.m. Wednesday. And it has the dreaded H over Florida. That means that it's saying, hey, it could make landfall as a hurricane sometime between 2 a.m. Wednesday and 2 a.m. Thursday, but more than likely sometime later during the day Wednesday. That right now is the forecasted cone. But notice the cone goes way over here in the Panhandle, goes all the way to Miami. So there's been some ticks today that's been more, from overnight and this morning that's been a little bit more west. We're going to show you some scenarios that can happen here, and I'm going to give you my opinion too, just my personal opinion. But right now, chances to see tropical storm force winds, that is 39 miles per hour or higher consistently for a 1 minute average. Pretty high, especially for the western Cayman Islands. And then, I mean, it seems like hardly anybody's talking about Cuba, and that's unfortunate, but the western areas of Cuba could get hit pretty hard because once it gets past the Cayman Islands, it's going to enter this area just south of western Cuba, where it's going to have a chance to even rapidly intensify in this area, especially how healthy the system looks right now. I would lean towards the GFS and the short-term models, but we'll see what happens. I don't want to speak too soon, but you see this area getting into Florida. Now on the far coastal, western coastal areas of Florida, Cape Coral up to Tampa Bay, you at least have a 60 to 70% chance now to see tropical storm force winds within the next 5 days. And that's obviously going to be at the later end of the next 5 days, literally in the next 4 or 5 days, I would say. But here we go. Another way to look at this is Zoom Earth, a great site, guys. It's free. It's awesome. So forecast to be a 50-mile-per-hour storm per the 2 p.m. update later today. 60-mile-per-hour storm sometime tonight. May become a hurricane sometime overnight tonight into Sunday. Could be. But definitely is forecast to become a hurricane, I think, sometime tomorrow afternoon at the latest. But the watch is up for Jamaica. Hurricane watch is up for all the Cayman Islands. But watch out the far western areas of the Cayman Islands. I think you guys will get hit the hardest. And then forecast to become a 100-mile-per-hour hurricane, guys. And then maybe 110 mile per hour. It's already going to be borderline a major hurricane. I mean, another 5 miles per hour. This will be a major hurricane slamming right into western Cuba, Havana. I mean, you guys could get hit very hard from this. I feel like nobody's really talking about Cuba much. And I'm telling you, I mean, if there's any place that's going to get, we know is going to get a direct impact from a hurricane, it's going to be western Cuba. So, I mean, it needs to be talked about a little bit more. Cuba is going to get slammed by this, guys. I mean, it looks like it's going to make a direct impact to areas of western Cuba. But here he goes. A major hurricane forecasted by 2 a.m. Wednesday. And then forecast right now, per the National Hurricane Center. I have a feeling this might tick. It might not. It might not. I don't want to speak too soon on that. But we'll see. Right now, it's right between the Euro and the GFS. And I would say it's favoring more the European model right now, which is, you know, historically a better model than the GFS. I think we all know. But looking at what's happening with, I keep wanting to say Fiona, what's happening with Ian right now, it is popping off some big time convection right now. I would say the mid-level circulation and the low-level circulation obviously still are not what we call vertically stacked, which is aligned. They're not basically stacked right on top of each other. But, I mean, you expect that with a tropical storm, but it is blowing up some major convection. And the reason is because it's beginning to move into a less sheared environment. Anticyclonic flow is definitely over this area, left over from the remnants of Fiona. And guys, I mean, this thing is going to be bombs away in this area right here. And I think it's going to be strengthening as it approaches the Cayman Islands. And I think I said there was only 18,000 people in the Cayman Islands. A comment corrected me, and I really appreciate you folks who are correcting me in that area. It's actually pushing 80,000 people population-wise due to a comment in my YouTube comments. So there's a lot of people who live on these smaller islands. And I think you guys are going to get hit by an intensifying hurricane. Am I saying a Category 4 or 5 hurricane for the Cayman Islands? No. But listen, man, this thing is, it's not only exploding convection, it's really getting wide. I mean, it's almost stretching all the clouds from it are almost stretching all the way from South America all the way to far westward. Let's keep saying westward, western areas of the Dominican Republic. So it's really getting large, guys. It really is. Another way to look at this, and the sun is coming up on this right now. If you see this, it's starting to get blue out here. That is the sun coming up. Obviously, the ocean is blue. So the sun is coming up on this right now. And if you look right here, you see these lower clouds. You see how they're circulating like this? That is that low-level circulation. Of course, you can't see the actual low-level circulation under all this mid-level convection. But they're going to become more aligned, I think, throughout the weekend. And when they do, I mean, all bets are off on how strong this can get between, I would say, the Western Caribbean and then the Eastern Gulf of Mexico. This can intensify rapidly, something we call RI for short, which stands for rapid intensification. And this is likely to happen at some point in the life of Ian. But it is looking good this morning for a tropical storm. And I have a feeling that this could become a hurricane sometime in the next 12 to 24 hours. I would not be surprised, but we'll see. We'll see. It's not forecast to become a hurricane until maybe sometime tomorrow evening, I believe, per the National Hurricane Center. But, oh, man, this is starting to enter a very favorable environment into the Central and Western Caribbean as it gets into the Western Caribbean. So let's go on and take a look at model guidance right here. Let's take a look at the European first. I can already tell you before we get going, the European and the GFS are verifying weaker than what it actually is. And I'm actually starting this off for this evening. So this is where we're going to start this off at. And the European's only showing it's a 105 millibar low pressure storm. And per the latest update, it's a 103 millibar low pressure storm. That's what the central pressure is saying. So it's already initializing weaker than it actually is. But here you go, Jamaica, the Cayman Islands right here, Cuba, and Florida. Here we go, moving through in time. Let's keep this moving. Hopefully we can get some forward motion here. And it looks like everybody and their brother is on tropical tidbits right now. So it looks like we're going to get a slower moving video. But here we go. I think everybody's waking up, checking all the models, seeing what it's looking like. So the panels are probably going to move in very slow. We can't complain. This is a free site. A guy named Levi runs this site, and it's hard to complain about a site that is free. So I'm no complaints here, but just bear with me as I work through this video. I think there's a lot of people running up the servers right now, but we'll stop this for Sunday morning. Anyways, it's well south of Cuba. This is where it's showing it's going to be. This is obviously a tropical storm at this point. I would argue that by the time we get into Sunday afternoon, we're talking about a hurricane. Even though it's showing only 1,002 millibar low pressure, there's no way it's going to be only that. It's going to be that high. It's going to be much lower. I think it'll be sub 1,000 millibar low pressure at this point. I really do. But as it's getting and you're getting into Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening, this gets away from Jamaica completely, inches closer to the Cayman Islands, especially the western Cayman Islands, and here it is. I mean, right now we'll stop it. This is for Monday afternoon. It's just west of the Cayman Islands. And I'm telling you, it's going to be stronger than what the European is showing. I would not be surprised if this is and I'm showing you the European. I'm about to show you the GFS, which I would favor for intensity really in the short term. But honestly, I don't want to get too ahead of myself. Hold on. Here we go. So Monday afternoon to evening, this starts to, excuse me, creep a little bit closer to Cuba, the western areas of Cuba. And this is when it could quickly intensify as it's making its approach towards western Cuba. And I think this could be a Category 2 hurricane, Category 3 hurricane as it slams western Cuba. Unfortunately, like I said, not a lot of people are talking about this, but they should be. Big time impacts throughout the day Tuesday, most likely for western Cuba. So we're moving forward here. We're getting, at this point, just southwest of the Florida Keys. These panels are moving in very slow. Right here in this area, this entire area of the Gulf of Mexico, and really anywhere in the Gulf, this is when it could really rapidly intensify. I mean, it's probably going to, I think, south of western Cuba, but I think it certainly has a solid chance to do it right here. And we keep this moving here in time. Scrapes the Florida Keys with the dirty side of the storm, which is that eastern side of the storm, rides up, strengthening upon approach per the Euro, and then makes landfalls around a 970 millibar low pressure hurricane. I would argue that's probably a Category 2, 3 hurricane, but I think it's going to be a little bit stronger if it takes this route. If it takes this route, you just got to imagine this is a stronger hurricane. But we'll see. It's hard to tell. But the European slams southwest Florida as a Category 2, maybe low-end Category 3 hurricane. I would argue a 970 millibar low pressure is probably a Category 2 hurricane. Around Wednesday afternoon, this is south of Tampa Bay, rides now up the peninsula of Florida. And notice, I just moved about 12 to 18 hours just now, and it barely moves. So the European is now favoring a GFS solution, and it sucks because I actually haven't showed you the GFS, but I showed it to you last night. Favoring a GFS solution as far as this system potentially kind of stalling out, not completely like to the point where it doesn't move, but slowing the system down. And there's going to be kind of a situation here where there's going to potentially be two competing steering currents. There's going to be a ridge trying to build out here in the Atlantic. There's going to be a trough coming in right here. That's the flow's going to be moving like this. And like I said, the ridge, yeah, so this is going to be a complicated steering current. I'm sorry, the flow's going to be moving in like this. And so it's going to be definitely a tough thing to figure out right here, right at this moment, as you got competing steering currents, and this is trying to figure out where it's going to go. Basically, you got a ridge that tries to build in up here, and then the flow's moving like this. And then you got a flow moving in like this, ridge moving in like this. There's a trough that's, I'm sorry, I explained this totally wrong. So at this point, the trough is going to be on out. Ridge tries to move in, and we'll show you this a lot better. I'm sorry for being very confusing. So the ridge builds in. You got a flow moving in like this, right? So it's pushing down on this system, trying to make it kind of almost go back southwest. Of course, it's not going to do that with a strong hurricane, with a hurricane right over the peninsula of Florida Thursday afternoon. Then you got a ridge out here with a flow moving like this, trying to yank this storm out, but a flow moving like this. And then at the same time, a trough up here, and this is trying to find that weakness aloft. So this is moving through in time. Eventually, the ridge on this side kind of wins. It dominates, and it kind of gets on the north part of the storm, and it's never able to find a weakness. Therefore, it just kind of moves back northwest. So it makes landfall down here, stalls out competing steering currents. And I'm sorry for getting sloppy on my delivery here. I'll be able to explain this a lot better here in a second. And then it moves northwest, quickly weakening due to land interaction, obviously. But this would affect areas like Georgia, South Carolina, could bring a tornado threat, but we got to figure out what this is going to do down here first. Latest GFS. What does the GFS do? I favor the GFS as far as strengthening in the short term. In the short term of life of this, I favor the GFS. Just due to the fact how strong the system already is looking right now. So we'll stop this around Sunday morning. It is just south of Jamaica. I say just south, but it's per the GFS, it's very well south of Jamaica, not even really bothering it much at all. So these panels are coming in a little bit slow. Let's see if we can get it rolling. Here we go. So we're getting into Sunday evening. We got a 985 millibar hurricane at this point per the GFS, and I could believe this. This is at this point a strong Category 1, maybe borderline Category 2 hurricane already. This comes up, misses the Cayman Islands wide left, to the west, to the point where it's a stronger hurricane per the GFS. As the European is much weaker, but thankfully it's much further west, so you guys would get hit by the outer bands of Ian, but it wouldn't be any kind of direct impact for you guys. This comes up. Thankfully, the GFS misses Western Cuba, and I guess, you still got that scenario, but it's hard to imagine this is going to completely miss the GFS. Miss Western Cuba. So, but at this point, it's between the Yucatan Peninsula and Cuba, and Western Cuba as a sub 950 millibar low pressure. That is probably Category 3, Category 4 hurricane. That's a major hurricane. Gets into the dreaded Gulf of Mexico, and the pressure drops at some point all the way to a 930 millibar low pressure Wednesday morning. So Wednesday morning, this is approaching Florida on the European, just south of Tampa. On the GFS Wednesday morning, this is well out into the Gulf of Mexico. Now watch what happens. This looks like it's taking that Michael path and heading right towards the Panhandle as a Category 5 hurricane, right? Well, watch what happens. Watch how this number begins to quickly rise. We're getting into Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday evening. We're all the way into Thursday morning. We're all the way up to a 960 millibar hurricane. That's still a powerful hurricane, but not near as powerful as a 930 millibar hurricane. And then it makes landfall sometime Thursday evening or overnight next Thursday into Friday as a 990, 992 millibar storm. If the GFS is correct, it would have this rapidly weakening instead of intensifying. It would rapidly intensify this in the Gulf of Mexico and then rapidly weakening it as it approaches the Panhandle of Florida. Do I believe this? I can believe some of it, and I'm going to talk to you about why now. But this would mean a tropical storm riding into Georgia, the Carolinas, and bringing some impactful conditions, but nothing catastrophic. Here's another look at the GFS. The brown is the dry air. The green is the more moist air. And here we go. Obviously, with a tropical system, you have, in general, more moist air. A lot more moist air. It's a tropical air mass. So here it comes. Here comes the GFS. The GFS, closer look at this, a 927 millibar low pressure. At this point right here Wednesday morning, if the GFS is correct, this is a borderline Category 5, if not a Category 5 hurricane. It's getting very close, very close. Category 4 at minimum. Wednesday morning, here it is. Now watch, this number begins to drop very quickly as we get later in the day Wednesday into overnight Wednesday into Thursday. Why? Well, look at all this dry air. This hasn't been mentioned a lot, but we got this amazing air mass over the eastern U.S. right now, the extreme eastern U.S. There's another cold front coming in. early next work week. People will start to feel the effects of it as early as tomorrow. This is coming through, and this is going to have a massive influence on Ian. One, it's going to have an influence on its strength in the long term. But two, the biggest thing will be steering currents. But I'm thinking it's going to have some impactful influences on Ian as far as strength too, especially if the GFS is correct. Now, I can believe this somewhat, that, if you have a trough and all this dry air and shear around, especially look how this dry air is getting wrapped into the circulation per the GFS. It absolutely will weaken if you have this much dry air getting wrapped into a tropical system. It will certainly weaken very quickly. But I think if you have a near Category 5 hurricane out in the Gulf of Mexico, it's going to be hard to convince anybody that this is going to rapidly weaken this much as it approaches landfall into the panhandle of Florida sometime late next work week. So yes, if a lot of dry air gets into this, it could weaken before, not strengthen upon landfall, but it could certainly weaken before landfall. But does it weaken from a Category 5 hurricane almost to, a tropical storm in 36 to 48 hours? It's going to be hard for me to believe that. I mean, basically, when you have a strong system like that, you have an intense moisture bubble. And basically, this moisture bubble protects tropical systems for any dry air intrusions. Now, with this much dry air in here, you're going to get something that wraps up into this. And this is going to completely cause a massive depletion of the moisture field. But hard to believe. Now, I do believe there's going to be some big-time dry air, polar air, really. Big-time cold and dry air, not cold, but dry and very cool air across the southeast. And I think this is going to have a factor on the strength of this system. So, hope that makes sense for you guys. But here we go. This is all the model guidance from the National Hurricane Center, the GFS, the ensembles, everything. So right now, per the morning runs, still liking the idea anywhere from the Big Bend areas to, Southwest Florida. Most of these have it going over Western Cuba, and most of these have it affecting at least the Cayman Islands. But Jamaica, you guys look safe, but you're going to get some gusty winds. You'll notice a difference in the weather as early as this afternoon, but I think you guys are going to be just fine down there in Jamaica. Now we look at the ensembles. What do they look like? Going through in time, we got slow movement here. They are pretty consolidated, and this is, let me make sure, this is the EPS mean here. So this is the European ensembles. Decently consolidated for the most part, but most of these members come up, affect the Cayman Islands. Then we're getting into Tuesday morning, a landfalling hurricane looking likely for Western Cuba. But of course, some of these members completely miss it. You got some members to escape out here. You got some members to affect more so of central Cuba, and then immediately get over the northern coastline of Cuba, get into the Florida states, and look at how some of these members make landfall as, a hurricane in far, far southwest Florida. But then you got a bunch of jumbled up members right here, and I know you can barely see on your screen, but these are numbers, and it shows basically the last two digits of the millibar of how the millibar number, judging how strong or weak the system is. So some of these members go right into South Florida, but some of these members stay out into the Gulf of Mexico, try to intensify. Then some of them drift into Western Florida. Some of them stay in the Eastern Gulf of Mexico. But you notice some of them that do stay in the Gulf of Mexico, they show that weakening. But some of them stay strong. So, big question. They get very scattered when it gets, about 6 or 7 days out from now. The GEFS ensembles, what did they show? We went through in time. Let's wait for these panels to load for 1 second. Here you go. Pretty tight-knit group of members right here as they affect the Cayman Islands tomorrow into Monday morning. Some very strong members into this. But, a lot less members hit Cuba in general. But the ones that, make it between Cuba and the Yucatan Peninsula are very strong, guys. Very strong. But here you go. You got some of these members, just like the European model, that escape and make it, find that weakness early on and start hitting Florida. But look at this huge area right here that it likes, where you basically got a bunch of members into here that crash it right into the panhandle. And they do weaken, but there are some that do not weaken like the actual operational run. And then you got some lingering members that still have not made any landfall with the U.S. as we're getting into next weekend. So we got to watch. Now, what's steering this? And I kind of jumbled up explaining this earlier in the video. This ridge is coming up. You got basically a flow around this ridge going like this, right? Just like that. So, and then you got this trough, and in general, trough acts as a big steering current with pushing systems out or sometimes pulling them in and creating a weakness in the pattern aloft. And then you got this ridge. So this is the latest GFS, the one that just came out this morning. So as this approaches the U.S., the middle part to later part of next work week, we're moving through in time. The idea was at first that this was going to feel this weakness enough to get captured by it and pulled out. But with this pull right here, that's pushing this way, this system this way, and then at the same time, you got the flow around this, pushing it back this way. This acts as two competing steering currents. So basically you got, I mean, if you look at my hands, you got a tug this way. I'm sorry, you got a tug this way, and then you got a tug that way. So if you got something in the middle of that, it's confused at where it needs to go. Therefore, it slows down and it stalls out. And that could be potentially what this does. I don't think it's going to stall out like a Hurricane Harvey or anything like that. But I do think it's going to slow down. So here we go. It's approaching landfall. The ridge tries to build over it. These ridges almost connect right here, if you will, even though they're still two separate ridging. And then you almost get a blocking up here. So this really can't escape at all. So then it just heads due north right into, you know, the panhandle of Florida, Alabama, Georgia, and actually tugs eventually north to northwest due to this big time ridging. I wouldn't say big time ridging, but ridging right here that is pushing this like this. So I hope that makes sense. Now the European, which at first yesterday was showing this getting captured by this trough and actually pulled this way and then yanked back into the Carolinas. The latest European from overnight still feels the weakness early on, starts to tug a little bit northeast, makes landfall, is a pretty strong hurricane into Florida. But notice this ridge is here too, just like the GFS, and this one is too, with the flow going like that, this flow going like that, this flow going like this. Here's that weakness in the pattern with that trough creating a weakness. Now you think this is heading right towards that weakness, and it is. But what happens here is moving forward here, it almost gets captured by it, but then it doesn't. So what happens here is you got this steering pointed this way, like I said, this pulling it that way. And in general, there isn't much steering right here at all. So this is when it starts to slow down per the European run, and it's not being steered by much at all. Really what's driving it is just the pure strength of the tropical system just gaining latitude. But it's trying to search for a weakness, but in general, there's enough pulling right here to where it's getting actually yanked back northwest. So it still gets yanked northwest, just like the European yesterday. But it doesn't really get captured by the trough and get way out here in the southeast where it gets re-pulled back into the southeast in the Carolinas as a hurricane. So I hope that makes sense. One thing we'll talk about, what's promoting such strengthening with this? Well, basically the shear from the wake or the outflow from Fiona was preventing this from strengthening in the Eastern Caribbean. But this is going to be gone now. And I think the GFS is doing an excellent job of showing the near perfect environment that Ian is going to have. It's going to have what we call an anticyclonic cyclone or flow aloft well above the system. This is going to allow the system to breathe, to ventilate. And I feel like I've said this every day for the last 2 to 3 weeks. But what happens here is you got winds aloft, a flow aloft moving in this direction, well above the storm. The cyclonic motion of this is going like this. So you would think you got competing wind motions, steering motions in the atmosphere. That would hurt the system, right? Well, no. This actually acts to pull air away from the center of the storm, allows more air to rise throughout the middle of the storm. So essentially, it allows the storm to breathe, to ventilate. That mixed, so there's no shear, no real dry air. So that allows the storm to at least gradually to almost rapidly intensify, especially once it gets into the Western Caribbean, where some of the warmest waters in the world are located. So this is a serious situation. It really is, guys. So we need to watch out. Let's briefly, guys, a 30-minute video, guys. Y'all got me talking for a long time. I know ain't nobody actually watching all 30 minutes of this video, but for folks who do, I just want to let you know I really appreciate you guys. So sometimes I just get the rambling and I don't even know how long I'm talking for. But thank y'all for people who really view for the long haul. It really means the world to me. I just want to let y'all know that. But Storm Prediction Center, I want to talk a little bit about the U.S. today. There's a marginal risk for severe storms in Arkansas, western Tennessee, northwestern Mississippi today. And we'll take a real broad look at this and what's going to happen is a piece of energy is going to fly through here with this ridge building back into the south central U.S. So if we can get this in motion here, some storms will fire up in northern Arkansas today. There's a big time lag right now, guys. But anyways, I apologize for you folks. But if you're basically in these areas of Arkansas, southern Missouri, into western Tennessee today, and basically an area of storms could potentially move through. These could produce some severe conditions. So just please be careful in that area, in that neck of the woods today for some severe weather. Everywhere else, it's heating up big time in Arkansas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, Texas today, but still a beautiful air mass from Georgia to the Carolinas to the Northeast, Great Lakes region, Ohio Valley. It feels very nice, but it's warming up ahead of another cold front. But thankfully, guys, there's another cold front that's coming, which will influence Ian, that is going to cool everybody back down and more people too, not just the immediate eastern U.S. That's all I got, guys. Thank y'all for tuning in. I really appreciate you guys. God bless, and I'll have you an update later this afternoon.